Hello
everyone, and welcome to the auditorium again, where I'm having another discussion with mesh makers. This time I'm joined by Kane Maven of Maven Homes and Quantum Luxury Homes, Maxwell Graft of Rustica, Frauke Horenbeek of Dachi, and Loz Hyde of Meshworks, who have all come to join me here today for a discussion about mesh and other things as well, materials and maybe viewers, because I would like to start by asking you what you think about the new viewers. We've been having a bit of a chat about this before we started, and I'd really like to share it with the audience because I think it's quite interesting what you guys feel about the new viewers that are coming out and the new potentials. Max, you were saying things. Perhaps we could start with you.
I think at this point, quite honestly, I think that the lab could really do themselves a very large favor by just hiring the developer teams from a couple of the third-party viewers to do their viewer for them. It seems like there's such a divide between the quality of like the Exodus viewer or Niren's or Firestorm compared to the official SL client. There's such a disparity between the two that it's kind of surprising how much different they are now.
Actually, Max, a little while ago, I was one of the Lindens that bought one of my builds, and I asked him about the SL viewer, and he said that they were deliberately making it very simplified for the newcomers, I guess, because I think they were worried so much about them leaving SL too quickly because, have the learning curve is, pretty amazing for SL. And they wanted to simplify it, I think, to, keep them. But I think the problem in the process of doing that is they've made it very, very, watered down and simplified for people like us that want to maybe, take photographs and use the other settings. So I think they kind of shot themselves in the foot with that one.
I mean, the quality is simplified as well in the process of taking a lot of those features out. I think you're not giving those new people quite the viewing experience that you might get on one of the other viewers, certainly, visual-wise anyways.
But I think it is, there's two sides to that equation because even back in the day of Viewer 1, once you log on the first time, there's a lot of buttons here, and this is stuff you have to figure out. And we know that one of the problems with Second Life is the first hour experience. And if people can't figure it out, they might not stay. My example, my favorite example is it's so hard to put on even shoes the first time. So I think some of the more subtle nuances in how things are rendered might be, the second concern people have once they got their shoes put on. So I agree that the user interface could be better, and they could certainly do things to make that easier to discover. But on the flip side, I use Firestorm, and it has a lot of options that I have no idea what they do. And that might be daunting to the newcomers as well.
They will find their way to Firestorm eventually.
Well, the SL viewer actually had two versions. You could log into a basic version and the more advanced version. That was a really good idea, I thought, because they could offer obviously the basic version to newcomers and so on. And then, if you wanted to use the more crazy version with all the bells and whistles, you just log on with the advanced version. But they just did away with all of that stuff.
I think it got confusing for people who were used to the basic version, then had a problem changing up to the more complex version. But I think if you're into Second Life, you can move from viewer to viewer. You can move from the SL viewer to Firestorm, and a lot of people do. Then you can actually move from a basic SL viewer to a more complex one, which offers more alternatives.
I'm loving the Firestorm.
I was over at interesting thing. I was over at Hippotropolis today, which is where the mesh viewer, where the materials viewer stuff had been set out, and that's been totally changed. And now that island has become basically a sandbox for third-party viewers. And as you walk around, you come into Niren's area, you come into the Singularity area, you come into the Firestorm area. It's as though they're using it to develop their materials viewer, with Linden Labs' consent, because that's sort of Oz Linden's place. And I thought that was interesting and very healthy. That they're working so much with the third-party people.
It's good to see the comparisons, definitely, of how materials look to each of the viewers. That's kind of a cool idea, put them side by side.
So has all of you used the materials viewer on something? Have you actually tried messing around with the materials in here yet?
I haven't done it here.
Sorry. I have to confess I haven't built anything yet. I did go over to Hippotropolis using the project viewer. Just to see this with my own eyes, but I have been remiss in actually doing anything with it yet, but it'll happen soon.
Actually on the viewer now, but I just in the last 2 days managed to get back on to using the SL viewers. For some reason, I'd crashed at startup, and so I think the last talk I did with Saffia and the guys was I couldn't actually even log on to go over there to look with you.
Right.
That was at the expo. But yeah, I plan to do it, the next day or two. Go over and look at the materials and see how it looks.
There's some interesting stuff there, and all the different viewers are working on them. What I found, I had to do some work for a client who asked me to use the Second Life viewer, so I ended up using the Second Life viewer and downloading it yesterday, and then I had to update it again to the latest version, and I found that things are rezzing an awful lot faster in it than they are in Firestorm for some reason, and there's a sort of clarity in the viewer which I found completely new. But so marked that I actually logged it. I was trying to take a picture in Babbage earlier for the steampunk talk later on today, and I was just waiting and waiting for things to res, and I finally thought, well, let's try the Second Life viewer. I tried the Second Life viewer, and although I could only go to a maximum distance of 512, everything resed a lot quicker, and actually everything looked a lot better.
It's promising.
Yeah. Scary.
I wonder if they've got early versions of that server-side baking in there or not. I know that Firestorm's working really hard to get that ready for a release, but I wonder if it's out in some form of it is in the materials viewer. Might be.
I think some form of it is in the new version, but of course server-side baking is only meant to relate to avatars. It's just meant to affect kind of system clothes and skins and things on avatars. It's not actually meant to apply to buildings, and yet it was really, really noticeable how much faster textures were rendering.
And that could be a subsequent, effect if if you take the avatar load off of the servers, it might be that it's able to deliver all the rest of that faster even. It might be that much of a load,
You suddenly realise just how much is being put on with the avatar. Yeah, that's perfectly true. But
I wonder if it's something to do with the materials too. The fact that although you don't see the materials yet, maybe because they've been now separated, I wonder if there's any kind of they've created some kind of allocation, like resources or caching or some other things to the different types of materials that will be used, and maybe the standard materials are loaded much faster because of that. Possibly, I don't know. Just a thought.
Yeah, I had mentioned in a couple of our previous talks about the land impact increasing by the use of materials on certain items, and I've discovered this week that, or I found out rather, that that applies to prim objects, not mesh objects.
Oh, wow.
So, from what I'm gathering so far, if you've created a mesh object, it uses the calculation. It applies the calculation to the objects, but because the old calculation is used for prims but not for mesh, it doesn't apply to the mesh items. So that's good news. The only real complaints that I've got about materials from what I can see so far of having messed with it is that there's really only two things that I don't like about it. The one is that there's no adjustment at all for the normal maps once you apply them. They're either on or off. And that's really problematic because normal maps look different in every environment that you have them in. So they're going to look really different in SL from what they look like in the program that you're using to create them with or any other environment you put them in. So having the ability to sort of tweak those and make them more or less is really important. And so much so, in fact, that a lot of times the result that you end up with is something that you can only come about by messing with the settings in here. It's not something you can predetermine in your application and go, oh, I want it to look like this, because you don't know that you can make it look like that until you get in here and sort of tweak around with it a little bit. Right. The other thing is that it doesn't really seem to be noticeable at all with just a normal map. It seems to me that you have to have both a specular and a normal map on something to make the normal map visible at all, which is kind of sucky because it makes everything look wet, and that's not necessarily something you want on every object that you've applied.
You could always just apply black to the spec map, and then, of course, no spec would show up, but it would be applied still. Would that work, do you think?
I have not tried that yet, but it doesn't. Now, I've had people say that they can see the normal maps without a spec map, but I really don't. It's certainly not as noticeable as it could or should be without having to have a specular map on it.
Spec would only show up the highlights in it, wouldn't it? Or I guess, I mean, if you had it as a dark grey, it would. But you obviously don't want it on everything because obviously some things are matte, like clothing, for instance. But yeah, if you just made it black, it would just be loaded in as a texture, but not actually be doing anything.
Sounds like
one thing. Yeah, it did to me too. It seemed like it when I was using it. One thing I wanted to post real quick is a link to a piece of software that's in beta right now. And while it's in beta, it's free, and it's used to create normal and specular maps and all that. It's called Canald. And I put a link to it there in open chat for anybody that wants to go get it to generate their material maps with. It's a pretty decent app. I've messed around with it a little bit.
GeoMeek's asking... Sorry, I was just going to throw in that GeoMeek's asking about video cards. And is one going to be better than another with mapping?
Actually, Max got me into a good card. I was using a very expensive workstation card, the Quadro FX 4800. But then Max was saying that he's using the 680 NVIDIA card for PC. I have a Mac, and you can get it for the Mac too, and I just switched over to that, and I've had no problems. But it is a pretty overkill card, I think. You could probably get away with, cheaper cards, but that's a great card.
Yeah, anything like 650 and above would be fine for SL and everything you want to do with it, I think.
I've got the 690 now.
Oh, nice. It's got like gigabytes of, I think there's 2 gigs for ones we have, but yours is more than that, I think, right? Is it 3 gigs?
Yeah.
Of RAM? Yeah,
that's
nice.
Basically 2 680 processors on one card, rather than having 2 separate cards. That's a monster.
Crazy. Yeah.
It is a bit of a monster. And it's...
They didn't do it for Max, unfortunately.
It was dropping yesterday, though. I think I overkilled it with huge audiences here and running 2 instances of Second Life at another point. It just, I think the card was fine. It was just Microsoft gave up, screaming.
My Quadro FX is obviously I bought it for using for Maya and stuff, which is amazing for. But I think they said there's like a 10% difference, like a drop in the performance of the 600, the 6800. No, hang on, the 680. I mean, but SL to me is also very important because a lot of the stuff I do obviously is in here as well. So I've kind of compromised, and I think it's working pretty good so far. I was getting freezes, like my entire computer would just freeze for about 2 or 3 seconds. But it hasn't done it since I've had the new card in.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so that card's working good.
Well, moving back to the question of maps and specular maps, one thing that interests me, you were saying about different effects with normal maps and not being able to predict them. Is that also true of different wind light settings? Are maps going to look radically different depending on the wind light setting you have?
They definitely do. Yeah. On some things you'll hit because it's all based on a normal map is basically using the normals of an object, or creating fake normals for an object that don't really exist. And the way that you see those kind of bumpy bits is the fact that the rendering engine is applying the light calculations from the environment that you're in. So if you change those light environment settings, the light is going to look radically different on the object, and consequently in some settings the bump maps are going to be much stronger than in others. The specular is really different in different wind light settings. I mean, it just absolutely jumps and changes quite drastically in the different light settings in here.
More fear.
Same thing kind of applies to your good old-fashioned diffuse texture too, doesn't it? I mean, when I
right,
wind light of course affects it, but also if I render something in Blender and I think it looks amazing in Blender, or even in Photoshop, right? And I upload, and then I'm getting a very different look in world, to the point where I now in my Blender files I set up fake lighting to try to approximate the in-world environment, so I catch those changes before I do go through the whole bake and upload cycle. I don't think that can be done with normals, but yeah, it would be nice, like Max said, to have some kind of after the fact tweaking, some kind of setting that lets you change how powerful the effect is.
There's fear that all of us as creators are going to have angry customers contacting us, complaining that either they don't see anything or they see crazy things happening with their, whether it's clothing or the houses or whatever we do. Seriously, I mean, you have to first put wind light on to even see the materials, and so who's going to be able to do that? Not many people, I don't think, not early on anyway, because obviously, it's all to do with their processes and all the rest of it. But yeah, it's kind of scary. I think people are going to put a wind light setting on and they're going to see their outfit looking terrible, because of this.
It's going to be even crazier than that, because as you walk from sim to sim,
that's right, yeah.
You don't know how your outfit is going to look, and what looks absolutely
It'd be quite embarrassing, couldn't it?
When you put it on at home, when you show up on the dance floor, it could look terrible.
Yeah, it's going to be a bit messy, isn't it? The only way to standardize what your materials are going to look like, regardless of the wind light setting, is to put everything on full bright, and have your maps and set that the way that it's, because that sort of locks it in to look a certain way.
Yeah, but what about nighttime?
Well, exactly.
How would that work? It's going to look terrible.
Yeah,
glowing neons.
I'm a blonde. I mean, full bright black hair can look okay, but if you're a blonde, you just walk around with this glowing lump on your head if you have full bright hair.
I so agree with it. I hate it.
I spent hours stripping Fulbright out of hair.
And nighttime and evening, and I find those lightnings or those time of days very important in Second Life for certain atmospheres. And I really hate Fulbright houses, Fulbright furniture. I don't get it at all.
There are some Sims, for example, New Babbage. You're not allowed to have Fulbright on, because it's such an atmosphere killer, they feel.
Right.
Agreed.
So they don't let you have Fulbright. I mean, I wasn't able to put up my subscriber-matics. They were quite happy with the way they looked. They felt they could blend into the Victorian environment, but the fact that they had been set to Fulbright and there was not a damn thing I could do about it meant that I couldn't have my subscriber-matics on display, which was a real nuisance because, my readership was would be pretty strong in the Steam lands.
See, that would be a good material to add, luminance to the materials, because Fulbright would go under that and you'd make a luminance map that would allow Fulbright to go on and off.
There is an emissive mask in the alpha channel, and that's
to be
used for illuminance of certain areas. Like if you want, the rest of the building to be dark, but you want the windows to look like they have glowy light showing through them, you can put an emissive mask that just cuts that window out as part of the alpha that blocks everything else out. It's pretty cool. You can have glowing bits on stuff.
That sounds very good.
That might work.
We've had a couple of questions in from Sven Concord, who says, how many people are retopolizing their low-res mesh, and Max said he did it occasionally, and Sven has asked anyone else, if not, are the results not worth it? And if not, what app are you using for the work?
I need to understand what he means by retopolizing. Does he mean going from, say, ZBrush to a base mesh from like that?
Can you explain?
Yeah, because there's a couple of different methods that are for retopology that are done for different things. Do you mean like going from a high poly mesh to a low poly mesh?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking it was. Because that's what I would be thinking it'd be used for. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've been using retopology simply to redefine the UV map on an object and sort of straighten things out or have better lines on it. Not necessarily going from a high poly to low poly mesh. I've done that before, but I haven't really done it with the new materials in here yet to get the details.
I think clothing might do well by going from a very high mesh, say in ZBrush, and bringing it down and using that normal map might be kind of cool.
I use 3D Coat, which is similar to ZBrush in the different things that it does, but it's got a really, really nice entire section on just doing retopology, and it makes it really, really easy to define your UV maps. Minutes versus the hours that it sometimes can take in something like Studio Max or Maya or Blender.
There's also
an amazing app, man.
I think also Mudbox is really good as well, and that's a little bit more simple to understand than ZBrush. Much more 3D friendly. I mean, as far as if you know a little bit about 3D, you're able to jump into that really easily. Whereas ZBrush has its own world, basically,
Mudbox is nice because it simplifies your workflow too. If you're in Studio Max or Maya, you can get it so that it's basically just a plug-in right within the application instead of something completely separate.
Right, you just send it to Mudbox, send it back to Maya or Max. It's very good. And also, I think in Mudbox you have layers, almost like Photoshop layers. You can actually layer your bumper mounts. So if you had, say, skin, you could do a very base version of skin first, of just like bumps, and then go in there and detail it up with another layer of, say, some cracks or some bigger pores, smaller pores, and other things. To kind of like, and you can actually blend them all together, just like you could in Photoshop if it was a 2D.
Yeah, 3D Coat works all the time in layers like that as well. Yeah, it even exports as a PSD and has like a live update feature where you can export your project that you're working on while you've still got the object open on the 3D Coat screen. You can export it as a PSD file, open up all those layers, do some edits, and hit save, and it updates in 3D Coat right on your object. It's really nice. So at that point, you can continue doing your texture work strictly within Photoshop using those tools, which are a bit more familiar and more robust than some of the ones in 3D Coat. It's pretty nice.
I was talking to a designer the other day who was talking about getting into mesh, and she is very well known for her textures. She's been off Second Life for a while, having a baby, and she feels she's got very much left behind as she starts to come back in. And she was saying that what she would love to do is be able to work with someone who could work with the mesh and the designing the mesh, and then work on the textures. Do you think that partnerships like those are possible? That, one person designs the mesh templates for clothes and things like that, and the other works on textures and texturizing the mesh? And I'm not talking the kind of very basic stuff that I think we see with a lot of clothes. I'm talking, this would be a fairly high-level, sophisticated partnership.
It would be possible, but both parties would need knowledge of each other's work. The person that does the Photoshop work, the textures, really needs to know how a 3D program works and how an unfolded head looks like, or an unfolded dress on a UV map. But it's very well possible. I do my baking and a first layer of textures and shadows in Maya, but the rest of the texturing I do in Photoshop. That is the the biggest part of my texturing, all in Photoshop. So I think if she can find someone, it's very possible. Yeah.
It's good. It's a bit. It depends on, obviously, for me, partnerships, personalities and stuff, but yeah, apart from that, if they can have that understanding of each other, then it's good as far as, the techniques and stuff.
You look at
there's a couple that are doing it already.
Any of the gaming companies that are out there, or the movie studios and whatever, and the majority of the time, you have very specific tasks that are assigned to the people as designers. This person is a matte painter for backgrounds. This person is an environment creator. This person is a character creator. And a lot of the time they'll do the models and the textures, but sometimes I guess you also have very specific texture people that, one person is just making the model and then they hand it off to the next guy who does the texturing work on it and so on.
Very true. Yeah.
That's the best part of working in Second Life, isn't it? That you can do everything yourself, or what you like. Total control.
I just want somebody that can do my ads and my pics for me and my note cards and
your animation
marketplace ads and let me design the item and then you put the animations in it and take all the rest on and go on.
There's one thing I've chosen not to do, and that's scripting. I will not. I just don't want to clog my mind with figuring out scripts. So I just let someone else do that. I don't do any. I don't want to.
Oh, okay. Even
I just stick them in. Nope, I just stick them in. I just get someone else to do it for me. I just stick them in my stuff. I don't want to be. I have way too many other things to worry about than have to then figure out how the heck to open a door or close it. That sounds stupid, but I'm just not interested in doing those things.
I do a little bit of scripting, but I definitely would be in. I owe a massive amount of gratitude to the couple of scripting people that I work with, they do amazing things with a part of their brain that I can't understand or access in my own. I'm over on the right side of my brain, and all that stuff is over on the left side, and I don't know how to go there very easily.
They're the unsung heroes, aren't they, really?
Oh, I think we can sing about them. I can see one of them sitting in the audience here.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm a bit of a code geek. I do all my own scripts. You know, I actually enjoy doing it. It is a break from all the more creative right side stuff, and it also gives me full control, so I can add more features. I kind of enjoy writing scripts, but it can be frustrating at times when things don't behave the way you think they would, and rotations are always fun and so on.
I guess I have been into
Did you say meow?
I interrupted with the loud meow there. Yes, I was going to. I was going to pick up on a line from Tara. Tara said that I bet if you asked a lot of scripters, they might say a good deal of it is right-brained. And Carehop, Seattle, is keeping quiet.
There's some art to good codes.
Right.
Simple, clean, elegant code. There's it's an art form.
Low lag, that's another big one.
Oh, yeah.
So
and it surprises me the difference in, just like with the design elements, there is a huge variation in the amount of code. You can have a script that works and open it up and, have it from one person and open it up and look at it, and just because it works doesn't mean that it's necessarily efficient or elegant is an excellent word that Kane used to describe good code. It really should be clean and simple and straightforward, and yet if you look at some scripts, they work exactly the same as the elegant one, but they're, a big spaghetti jumble of mess inside of them. And then you get somebody else's code and you look at it and it's just precise and to the point and very cleanly laid out and efficient, and I love seeing good code like that. It makes a lot of difference, especially if you have to go in and edit after the fact.
That's why you pay someone else to do it.
They say, though, that code is sort of revealing, don't they, of the coder. It's as much of, when you know code and you look at someone's code, it's like looking at design work. It's characteristic of the creator.
Well, I think that's very true. It's if you look at the structure or the lack of structure, it'll say something about the process behind the script itself, how it came into being, and that'll in turn say something about the person who wrote it. So I think that's totally true.
Yes. Okay. Now another question from Sven. He's saying, regarding mesh, how many people are using their meshes in places besides Second Life, for example, Unity 3D?
I have not. I have only done it here.
Into it in Cloud Party actually a little bit, just because they have some pretty damn good tools. With their materials, they actually have a real shader network, like you'd get in, say, a 3D program like Maya or Max and so on. And so that's amazing. There's no upload charges to upload mesh or materials, so that's really cool as well. So you can really kind of experiment with things.
Limits.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Make trees or buildings or whatever you want out of mesh. I've been doing stuff over in Cloud Party for about 9 months as well. Pretty interesting where they're going with that.
Cloud Party is actually a web-based browser, so you just basically use your regular browser like Chrome or Firefox, and just log in that way, which is pretty amazing.
Yes, you don't have to have Facebook now. It does make it easier.
They just added a material that you can apply to a surface in there that's an actual mirror, which is something we've I've wanted in SL for a long time, and it's really, really neat because it works perfectly.
It's awesome.
It's clear, and it's just brilliant use of the technology over there.
Wow, I've longed for, to have reflections and things.
Your avatar.
I know that
reflected.
Sexton, it doesn't have to be the avatar, but Sexton Shepherd did some wonderful work, but it was all kind of trickery. Do you remember his Hall of Mirrors? Anyone?
I thought you were going to say, that sex in Second Life would be better if you had mirrors.
Well, I'm sure that the first person to fit a functioning mirror to the top of a bed would to make an absolute fortune.
The funny thing is, they have reflections in the water, right? Don't they have reflections in the ocean already? So what's
that's
going
what
on?
I hear, that someone did a trick where you saw, you sit on the mirror and you lay on your side and you saw your own reflection in the water.
That's clever.
Like build a sideways house kind of thing.
Right, yeah. That's what he did, I think.
They've got another tool over there that they just put in place that would be really advantageous here in SL. I wish they would do it. It's basically they have a system where you can build with a kind of a basic building block like a prim system. And if you don't have like Blender or 3D Code, or you don't know those applications or whatever, you can build stuff with these blocks, and then when you're done, you press a button and it converts it into a very refined mesh, which is really
like smooths
nice.
it?
Smooths it and does all kinds of things. It's really nice because you can, enable people that aren't really mesh or 3D, builders to build things. It's the same. It's the same advantage that it gave people here when we were all building with just prims. It lets anybody build, and it's really nice because once you're done with it, you can actually download the mesh object, and for that matter, you could build something over in Cloud Party, convert it to mesh, download it to your desktop, and bring it into SL and have that mesh object in here, which is kind of a cool idea. You could go over there and build it.
How much control does it give you over smoothing and sharp edges and that kind of thing?
I haven't really looked into it that much, to be honest with you, but I've seen a lot of people messing with it because they're not, they don't have Blender or they don't know, a 3D program. But I've seen some pretty neat builds with it.
Yeah, it's a pretty clever. Go on.
What is keeping me from working in other worlds is that a lot of my work has come with the help of other creators here in Second Life. I buy my textures in here in this world. I buy my animations in here, my scripts. I can take them with me to another world, and that makes it very hard for a designer to start elsewhere, unless you're only interested in designing shapes and chairs without animations. And animations especially, I cannot make what I make without them.
You have to talk your other people to join Cloud Party.
Well, I know if you use TRU textures, they allow you to take them to other worlds now. You have to.
Okay.
You have to.
I can live without. I can
that.
handle the textures. I cannot handle the fact that my objects have the work of 10 to 20 animators per bed. I cannot take all 20 of them with me. I'm very much bound to this world in that respect.
And you can't really have adult animations in Cloud Party yet.
Oh,
anyways.
well, then we're done with Cloud Party.
Well, yeah, Fruka can't go there then. Her show won't make it over there, that's for sure.
But there's much more to your furniture than adult animations, although you are famous for having such high quality ones.
It's a very nice part of my job. I have just finished a new menu, and that means I have watched animations for a week full time. I spent a lot of my time as two naked avatars. It is,
Go on.
yeah, I like that part of Second Life.
Yeah. There is silence from the male members of the panel as they digest this information.
Well, I think that's because if we started spending a bunch of time here as two naked avatars, we'd never get any damn work done. It's a different mindset.
True. No, but it is a very big part of Second Life that we co-create, that we have other designers that we work with, and yeah, we have 10 years. It's not going to be easy for something as Cloud Party to ever come near this.
It's true. It's just that I think that, with some of the things that are happening now, and with Mesh coming out and all the other new things that are happening, Cloud Party is also offering those, and maybe even a little bit better than Second Life. And so it's more just to try out new things, I think, that may be more advanced. But yeah, it'll be a long time before Cloud Party ever gets close to the kind of community feeling and things that go on in Second Life.
Yeah, but remember MySpace. The leaders can get dethroned before you expect sometimes. So yeah, I wouldn't.
Although
I think that the lab is pretty safe for now, but they should be looking over their shoulder maybe a little bit and keep a good eye on what's going on behind them in the race.
Reach down kind of top plateau.
I just saw another comment yesterday from Rod Linden. He did an interview with the San Francisco Chronicle, I think it was, and he mentioned again about the next generation of virtual world which Linden Labs is investing in. And I still don't know what that is, or if they're making a new updated Second Life or Third Life, or what they're working on. But apparently something's going on at the lab with them, investing in a future virtual world type of thing. I don't know what it is yet, but I've seen him mention it twice now. Once in that article, and also in the Drax Files last video that Draxter did.
That's interesting to speculate what it would actually be. But difficult to do. I am really sorry about this, everyone, but we have got another presentation at the top of the hour, so we're going to have to finish punctually, and that's a real shame because we were late starting. So I'm going to say, if anyone has any last questions for the panel, now would be the time to ask. And I'm really sorry we're going to have to wrap this so quickly. But they've got a big presentation coming after us. No, we can't leave Joan of Arc waiting.
And they all have swords, so we can't get on the stage.
You've come unarmed, Max.
Just use your cannon on them.
I can actually res the pirate ship I did this morning to make the poster. I put Frauke's bistro table next to the pirate ship as examples of mesh. It looked a little unusual, but pirates have to slip off and have sophisticated French meals too.
It sounds nice, the bistro table on the ship.
Yeah.
Party barge.
Very well. Okay, does anyone have any questions, last questions that they would like to ask? I guess, guys, we're not going to be doing this again till Christmas unless we actually did something, say, at the Prim Perfect. I mean, would people like it if we had periodic talks at Prim Perfect that you could all come and listen to? It depends on whether these guys would like to do this. Would you? Sort of sit around and chew the fat and people come and listen?
So do it. Would be an honour.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yay! Yay!
See, I think as we start to play around with the materials, it might be very good to, get different opinions of it.
Right, touch back.
Things that are going on.
In
totally.
a month and sort of see where everybody's at with it.
I really think that, probably in the next couple of months or so, we're really going to be starting to test those and bringing stuff out. I know I've been thinking about adding materials to some of my existing items just to see how they look. So definitely be cool to, kind of like compare notes, so to speak.
Oh, that's a half-hour discussion.
I have
Don't
not
get me
heard
started.
any new news other than Oz. The last comment I heard Oz make about it was that they're not going to work on it again until materials is released. Now that materials has been released, it's anybody's guess. Quickly, I think that I think we're not going to see a deformer until we see a new avatar, because the deformer actually works great, but it works so good that it makes really nice clothing look really shitty because it's based on the really shitty avatar that we have to deal with here. And when it deforms on that avatar, you see lots of really ugly flaws in it that show up in your really nice piece of mesh clothing. So until we have a better avatar, I don't think we're going to see it. And, looking at the track record of Linden Labs, I find myself, really wondering if they're capable of putting out the deformer and a new avatar anytime in the near future together. I don't really see it happening. I think it's kind of a done deal.
I think there's going to be such problems with the new avatar. The amount of money that people have spent on their wardrobes, on their skins, on their hair, all of which would become invalid, and animation overrides, and all the animations in chairs.
I'm
have
thinking you can have the same avatar, but a little more refined. A little more refined around the elbows, around the knees, and it would be so much better already. And I think you can do that with the same UV map if you do it smart. Just a little more faces on the right places.
Yeah, if the separation stays in the same place, like the legs to the torso, if they mess around with that part, you should be fine.
I
like
think
the arms.
ideally what they're going to have to do is release a new avatar and give you the option to choose the old one or the new one, which again compounds the problem.
That'd be the best way.
And is going to delay seeing any of this even further.
It does need all the same. How do you call those things that rotate in your body?
Pivot points.
No, between
the skeleton,
between your arm and your hand.
Joint.
Joints. Thank you,
joints. Okay.
Yeah, you need. I have very difficult. It's very difficult to talk technical stuff with people who speak English this much. But yeah, you need to set joints for the animations. If they can do Otherwise, you break everything in Second Life. The animations, all the furniture, all the clothing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think this is a really interesting discussion, which we'll carry on in a month's time over at the Prim Perfect headquarters. We'll have a meeting there, and I'll make sure that everyone gets to hear about it. Thank you, everyone, for coming today to hear the talk.
Thank you.
And especially thank you to my guests, Kay Maven, Maxwell Graf, Fruki Horenbeek, and Loz Hyde. Frauke.
Yes.
Freaky.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Freaker.
It's been great fun. Okay.
Thanks for coming, everybody.